Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. You know, for students of the Civil War who are also collectors of period portrait photographs of the soldiers and sailors who served, the discovery of an inscription with the individual's name, rank, and unit opens up all kinds of opportunities for research. Military service records, pension files, letters, diaries, newspaper reports, regimental histories, family stories, and much, much more. Armed with information gleaned from these sources can help us appreciate their lives and service, helps us to look at the past so we can understand what to think about in the future. But what about the portraits of soldiers and sailors whose identities have been lost in time? What happens after we've exhausted all our efforts to put a face to a name? What is the value of these portraits to the larger body of Civil War scholarship? You may rightfully ask. The answer, at least my answer, is these photographs of unknowns can be of great, enormous value as we seek to learn more about the war. Here's a case in point. This portrait here of a veteran campaigner with a well worn pair of muddy brogans was taken by a prominent photographer in New York City named Abraham Bogardus. For you students of Civil War material culture, this portrait is a bonanza of information about uniforms, equipment, and weapons. I want to share a description which was put together by Michael R. Cunningham, PhD. He's a contributing editor for Military Images magazine. Mike writes about this image. He wears an 1858 patterned sack coat over a placket front shirt. His sky blue trousers, meant for mounted troopers, have an extra layer to prevent saddle chafing, also favored by seasoned foot soldiers. He wears a standard issue booties around his waist. A pattern 1851 eagle plate secures his cap box, 58 caliber cartridge box, and a bayonet scabbard. The curvature of the barrel bands points to a model 1863 Springfield rifled musket. A wooden tompion protects the bore. Also visible are V-shaped shoulder strap attachments of the 1855 pattern knapsack topped by a blanket. A gum blanket and forage cap lie beside the knapsack. So, big thanks to Mike for bringing his authoritative knowledge to help us understand what we're seeing in this portrait. Each of those items mentioned by Mike and described by Mike are all fascinating, taken one at a time, and here they are all together. Now, for you serious students of material culture of the Civil War, all of this opens up new paths to explore as you begin to learn more about the uniforms, the equipment, and the weapons that were part of these soldiers' everyday existence while they're in camp and on campaign. Now, there's another detail that opens up another path. It's on the back of the cardstock mount of this image. It's a period inscription, as you can see in blue ink, and it reads, Ein Soldat aus Sherman's Armee. Pardon my German, but that's the best I can do. The transcription, a soldier from Sherman's army, is likely written by the man pictured here. He may have been an immigrant who came to America as a child with his family or as a young man searching for opportunity and freedom. Considering that he posed for this portrait in the New York City Gallery, he may have belonged to one of the Empire State Regiments that marched to the sea with Major General William T. Sherman's forces, then went on the campaign in the Carolinas and participated in the Grand Review in Washington, D.C., before mustering out of the Army and melting back into civilian life. It's a vast number of men of German origins who served in the Union armies. One of them is a man named Joseph George Rosengarten. His life dates were 1835 to 1921. He was a first lieutenant in the 121st Pennsylvania Infantry and a member of the staff of Major General John Reynolds, who lost his life at Gettysburg. Rosengarten's the author of a paper titled The German Soldier in the Wars of the United States. Rosengarten read this paper to members of the German Society in Philadelphia in 1886. I want to share a few passages from his address, which, as you might imagine, express pride for the men from his homeland who fought for their adopted country. Yet he also does point out that not all of his brethren were destined for greatness on the battlefield. So here's a few excerpts. Rosengarten says or writes, part of the unwritten history of the war for the Union is the result of the firm stand of the Germans who took in defense of their new fatherland in the East and still more in the West. Before the rebellion, the German element was hardly appreciated by the mass of the people. With the outbreak of the war, it asserted itself and won a place in the consideration of their fellow citizens that has been shown by their recognition in its government and, to a still greater degree, in its social development. In the Southwest, notably, the Southern element was antagonistic to the Germans, their industry, their frugality, their sobriety, their simple tastes, their love of family, their pride in their homes were all elements of a civilization unknown in that part of the country. When the Germans answered the appeal to support and defend the Union, their uprising was a surprise. Politicians looked unkindly on their military organizations and were indisposed to give them a place in the army. The Germans, who had been soldiers at home but were employed peacefully throughout the country, at the first appeal to arms, hurried to join their fellow countrymen, and many others joined them who had recently come over here to seek their fortunes, and not a few whose trade of this war was helped to swell the strength of the German regiments. Many Germans, no doubt, came over here as sort of freebooters, attracted by the high pay and the rapid promotion and all the advantages that a volunteer army enjoyed over the great standing army of their native country. Many of them settled here when the war was over and became good and useful citizens, ready to do their share in making their new homes prosperous and happy. Thus, whatever the sacrifices, and they were great in life and health, their reward has been proportionately great, and the Germans throughout the civilized world owe much of their present position, of the accepted greatness of the empire, to the devotion freely offered of their services to the United States and its hour of trial, and to the example they then gave of fidelity to their political principles. There were, of course, incompetent officers and inefficient soldiers in their number at the outset, but these were gradually weeded out, and in the end, it can be fairly be said that the German soldiers in the rebellion contributed largely to the success that finally crowned the war. There were, of course, on the surface, many Germans who rose early to a dangerous eminence and soon ended their career with anything but credit to themselves or their countrymen. But these were soon thinned out by the actual experiences of real war. As they disappeared, their places were taken by men of merit, and the German soldier earned the rank which his own achievements had gained for him. It was in the ranks and as non commissioned officers that their steadiness, courage, discipline, endurance, and other manly virtues were especially marked. Courage is not such a rare virtue, but the capacity to be a good soldier in the long and weary months of inaction, in the depression incidental to defeat, in the license that follows victory, in the trying hours of imprisonment and sickness. This was the marked characteristic of the German soldier, and it shone out in those regiments and companies in which the mass was made up of impetuous and undisciplined Americans, unaccustomed to obedience and self sacrifice. Here and there, a German was found to be steadying who steadied the others by his example, sometimes without a word, occasionally by a little encouragement, always by his manly and soldierly qualities. The literature of the war is largely made up of the heroic achievements of those who gained promotion and distinction, but there is also found in regimental histories and in the dry annals of state records the occasional mention of some special gallantry of the enlisted man. The story of his part in the hardships and the successes of the war remains to be told, cannot perhaps, in view of the vast number of soldiers, ever be fully told. But whatever the German soldier served there, he made his mark by characteristic virtues, the distinguishing traits of his nationality. That last paragraph brings me back to this photograph. This unknown soldier, currently unknown, maybe someday we'll be able to find his face. It adds a visual. Perhaps you might call this image a representative portrait of, as Rosengarten wrote, the story of his part of the hardships and the successes of the war remains to be told. Cannot perhaps, in view of the vast number of soldiers, ever fully told. These, of course, were the German soldiers who served in the tens of thousands in the Union Army. So thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.